I spun a couple wheels to let RNG decide what build I'd be playing, and I got Storm Call Inquisitor. Yo, I like Inquisitor. Inquisitor is fun. This is Storm Call. It's a 12-year-old spell that places a little marker on the ground that blows up in a lightning AoE after a short delay. It's pretty dang unpopular these days, since the 1 or 2 second delay can often mean your death in Path of Exile. But that's a problem for me to figure out. Today, I'm going to be taking Storm Call Inquisitor all the way up to the 3 new bosses that just got added in the Secrets of the Atlas expansion, in SSF by the way. Before we begin, big thank you to all you new channel members, you guys rock. This is Build Roulette Episode 5, let's get started. Our journey begins at the character select screen where I of the Stormcaller, a humble Templar, is born. He wakes up on the beach and his story unfolds. Immediately after being a Hillock, I managed to buy a nice pair of move speed and life regen boots off of Tarklee. An amazing start. This could be a great sign of what's to come. I start out by using lightning tendies as my skill of choice since it's lightning and I only get Stormcall at level 12, so lightning tendies it is. I have my first mercenary fight in the Mudflats and win, so now I've got a ranger to accompany me, but not for long because she keeps freaking dying. Somehow, before even reaching Brutus, I already have 17% increased rarity on gear, which I'm hoping will translate into getting some useful uniques early on in the run, but only time will tell. At level 12, I reach the Caverns of Wrath and go back to town for that juicy Stormcall skill gem that I've been waiting for. The damage is surprisingly not terrible, though the delay is something I'm gonna have to get used to. A good friend of mine feels betrayed by the fact that I've already caught up to him in about half an hour, so I throw him a little shade cause I know he can take it. I take out Merveil, easy peasy, and she drops a subscriber's orb. Yeah, these things are pretty damn rare. I wouldn't mind if they buffed the drop rates, honestly. In Act 2, the Chamber of Sins, I run into a ghosted Black Death spider boss, which gives me major invasion PTSD. If you know, you know. I run for my life and somehow squash it, getting to level 14 in the process. I kill Oak in his little rundown camp, he rolls over and he drops our very first unique, and it's a good one. Life Sprig. While not an amazing drop like a Headhunter or anything, it is a great drop for any spell-based character this early on. +1 to Socket of Gems is huge, and all the other stats are pretty damn helpful too. So I throw that on and add in Herald of Thunder since I'm high enough level for it now. In the Val Ruins, I do something incredibly stupid. I decide to use the Corruption Altar on my Stormcall skill gem in hopes for a +1 on it, and guess what? It actually hits. But now I can't even equip it anymore. I've been playing so much PoE2 that I forgot that it works differently in this one. So that was really dumb of me. In the Caverns, I fought an essenced big bear guy and he dropped our very first Chaos Orb. Nice. I make my way up the pyramid and encounter a mercenary holding a silver branch, so I yoink that from them. I don't need it or anything, but you can never have too many uniques in your stash, right? I nuke down the Val Oversoul and quickly make my way through Act 3, where I grab the Conductivity Curse Gem to lower enemy lightning resistances and experience my very first death of the character, of which there will be many. I almost got away, and then another one in the Solaris Temple. These guys are scary. I give Not a Cockroach a gift and ID a nice ES shield with life and resistances, which I immediately put on to replace a meh wand I was using. Dominus goes down without a hitch, and already I'm in Act 4. Things are going pretty smoothly so far, let's keep this up. Right off the bat in the Blood Aqueducts, I have a long drawn-out fight with a Merc, but it is totally worth it as she drops a Thief's Torment. An insanely useful ring early on, particularly for attack builds, which we are not, but even other builds can take advantage of the rarity and huge amount of elemental resistances it provides. Yes, it takes up 2 ring slots, but for now, totally worth it. At this point, I go do the lab for the first time and bring down Emperor Izaro, allowing me to ascend to the Inquisitor. And for some dumbass reason that I really cannot begin to understand, I pick the Consecrated Ground Node over Battle Mage. What possessed me to do this? I do not know, but here we are. Anyways, I continue with Act 4, and in Comb's Dream, I replace my Life Sprig wand with a new scepter that simply has +1 to all lightning skill gems, which is a definite upgrade. I kill Kaom, and in the Restless Dream, I happen upon a Merc wearing one of the most important uniques for the build early on, Ghost Wraith. I am extremely careful when fighting her for it because I do not want to mess this up. Carefully, I take her down and she drops the Ghost Wraith. So what makes this unique so good? I mean, it's literally a level 11 unique, right? It can't be that good. Well, it's got a lot of energy shield and a lot of life and 50% chaos res, which is huge this early on, by the way, and half of your life gets converted to energy shield. So you end up with less life, yes, but you got a buttload of energy shield. And we are gonna make good use of that. I go back to town and immediately respec out of the consecrated ground node and pick Instruments of Virtue for Battle Mage, which makes it so that any added damage my weapons have get added to my spell damage, which is huge when you pair it with the Spellblade support, which literally does the same thing but at like 40% effectiveness. And most importantly, Energy Blade. That's right, this was the plan all along. I just didn't think I'd get a Ghost Wraith this early. For the uninitiated like myself, Energy Blade cuts your energy shield in half, which is definitely noticeable, but it replaces your main hand weapon with an Energy Blade that has more base damage based on how much ES you have. So basically, you stack a ton of energy shield and you get damage. Or if you have a Ghost Wraith, you stack both life and energy shield and you get damage. This is a massive upgrade and I don't expect to replace it anytime soon. I push on and get a unique ring called Gratis Signet from a mercenary. It seems like a cool ring, but I don't really have attacks that crit, so not particularly helpful right now. Then I faced off with Malachi, which, as you can hopefully tell, my damage is really solid now, though I am running into some slight mana issues. I start Act 5, insta-deleting Overseer Crow, which I have a good laugh at, and then I die to a red beast and arguably the most annoying enemies in the campaign, the Prox Shield Special Throw dudes you find here. Rest in peace. I run into a merc who's got that special new Storm Call of Trarthus equipped, which I was hoping to play around with on this character, but I can't choose it as my reward, so that's lame. In fact, I'll just tell you guys right now, I never saw it again for the rest of the playthrough, which is really sad because I was hoping to give it a shot. Then I killed Innocence and Kitava and nothing special really happened. In the northern forest of Act 6, I get surrounded by some fire-breathing snakes and decide to take on a merc right in the middle of all that, and I get absolutely obliterated. Fun times. I take out the lovely man-eating spider that is Arakali, dying not once but twice in the process, which is very unusual for me, but I suppose I misplayed. It's all good, we are in soft core. At this point I decide it's time to corrupt some Storm Call gems in hopes of turning one of them into Val Storm Call, which will be a nice little extra damage burst button I can press, and I get it on my second try.
Nice.
I reluctantly take a leisurely walk in some smelly sewers, and Val Storm Call absolutely destroys the fat lady in a split second. After that, I fight a mercenary for his amethyst ring because it's got like 80 life, some energy shield, and 36% increased rarity on it. This is the kind of ring I want to replace Thief's Torment with. It's a beauty. I go for my second lab and well, Izaro doesn't really stand a chance. I ascend and pick Righteous Providence as my second node of choice, which gives me a lot of strength in int and gives me crit as long as I stack both of those up. Spoilers, I will come to regret this choice in the future. Again, I don't know what it is with me and picking Ascendancy nodes today. Then I get one shot by this Earthquake Merc, which is just completely absurd. I keep pushing forward, leveling up in the process, and I grab the Iron Will Keystone, which makes my Storm Call do significantly more damage because the strength bonus applies to spells as well. I should also mention that I do have the Elemental Overload Keystone at this point. I kind of forgot to record it when I actually got it, so that was my bad. The twin sisters Solaris and Lunaris go down, and then in Act 9, something crazy happened. A Divine Orb! Wow, if only this were in Trade League, that would be massive. But here in the land of SSF, it's not nearly as useful until much later in my progression, so I put it back where I found it. At level 64, this is what my passive tree looks like. Nothing else exciting happens in Acts 9 or 10 besides killing the bosses and doing the Merc Lab, where I grab Inevitable Judgment. Why am I doing this? I don't even have much crit, and the crit I do have is only there to proc Elemental Overload. What the hell am I even thinking, guys? In any case, the campaign is done, and I think my little Templar here has earned some new threads. Now that's more like it. Time for the endgame. I don't really know how the whole new memory tear maps mechanic thing works yet. I've been avoiding watching anybody else's videos lately, but I'm guessing that I'll eventually run into that stuff just by progressing through the maps. Kind of like how Maven and the Eater and Exarch just start showing up. So my first goal here in the endgame is to get a bunch more levels and progress through the Atlas, I guess. So I hop into my first map and die over and over. But I do manage to take out the boss somehow. Immediately I spec out of the crit pen ascendancy node and instead take the consecrated ground one again for some regen, and I spec into Zealot's Oath so that my life regen applies to my energy shield instead. I'm hoping that this is going to make me feel a bit tankier, but we'll see. I do a few more low tier white maps, getting completion where I can, and experience quite a few one-shots from mercenaries, which I've heard is not that uncommon in maps. As if I hadn't already wasted enough gold swapping ascendancy nodes, I decide to make one final change and I spec out of Righteous Providence for going the crit route entirely in favor of Instruments of Zeal, aka shield charge 4 times in a row to get a massive DPS boost for 4 seconds. This is not really a fun playstyle to have to keep up, it's very clunky, but the damage boost it provides is nearly double and the AoE is massive, so as clunky as it is, it seems like it's the right play for now. I continue mapping and quickly come to accept that fizz damage is a real problem for me. I am dying in nearly every map, and most maps more than once. This build feels incredibly squishy right now, but to be fair, I am only level 70 or so. There is a lot of room for improvements to come. I get tired of manually casting conductivity, so I decide to throw it into a Hex Touch setup with Orb of Storms, which feels much smoother to play, although it is a slightly weaker in terms of single target damage. I keep dying left and right, and eventually decide enough is enough. I am taking off the Ghost Wraith in favor of something a little bit tankier, like this Lightbane Raiment I found. It's not amazing, and my damage has gone down, but I do start feeling a little bit tankier, which is kind of important while I'm just trying to get some levels. I get a Barracks Respite from a Mercenary, which could come in handy in the future if I can get all 3 of them and turn them into a Taming, but that might be a little bit far-fetched. Next, I get owned a couple of times again, and then a very helpful pair of unique gloves drops, Kalisa's Grace. These gloves have a lot of energy shield, a decent chunk of life, and most importantly, any spell you socket in there gets supported by faster casting, making it a pseudo 5-link, which is huge right now. I need all the damage I can get. By the way, in case you are wondering, this is my support setup I have moving forward. Storm Call plus Spellblade, of course, for more damage, less duration so that it takes less time for the lightning bolts to strike down from the heavens, and a mixture of Spell Cascade and Spell Echo. Spell Cascade for a much bigger AoE and clear in maps, and Spell Echo for bosses and the like. Though I'm not really swapping them on the fly, I'm sort of just trying them out to see what feels best. Of course, with the faster casting provided by the gloves. I get my first memory map in a T6 and end up finding this really not bad Hubris Circlet that I craft some ES onto to end up with a 280 energy shield and 45 fire res helmet, which is way better than what the hell I had on before. Then I do an Oba's Cursed Trove from a Kirak mission and get to level 80. I find this nice fractured cast speed ring, which I'll hold on to for now. Hopefully I can craft it and turn it into something good. After that, I spot a heavy strike of Chargeless from a Merc, which I grab for fun, and on the next one I get my first proper 5-link that I can use after a very close call. I get to level 82 and end up doing a pretty significant passive tree respec, allowing me to save some points and stretch over to this big ES cluster in the middle of the tree, putting me at over 3k ES now, with the Ghost Wraith that I've already swapped back to because my damage just wasn't cutting it anymore without it. As you've probably noticed by now, I have a lot of indecision going into this build. It is my first time playing one of these Energy Blade Life ES stacking builds a la Captain Lance, and I do want to mention that I ended up using his guides as a reference, since he seems to be the expert, so shout out to Captain Lance. At this point, I decide that I really want to get some more quality on my Energy Blade gem, since that gives me more energy shield to work with, so I go run the Merc Lab a couple extra times and quality it up. I keep mapping and kill a ghosted boss who drops a second Ghost Wraith, and this one's kinda slightly better on the rolls, so I swap over to it. I also get my very first 6-link, except it's on a pure evasion base, so really not that helpful for us. Dang. At this point, I am feeling tankier than before, but I decide to suck it up and make a cast when damage taken setup with Immortal Call and Wave of Conviction for the lightning exposure it provides. Then I run my first lab trial in maps and get myself an offering so that I could run the Uber lab when I'm ready. I am very eager to get that done. I also run into a merc that I want to hire as opposed to steal from because this guy's got determination and vitality, which would give me some much needed defense and free up my mana for something else like Tempest Shield, for example. I get to level 84, gamble myself a really nice ES shield over at Faustus, which I immediately swap over to because the only thing my previous shield had going for it was a lot of resistances, which I am well over capped for right now. With that, I'm just shy of having 4k ES now, which is starting to feel pretty dang good actually. I finally go run that lab offering I found and beat Izaro up one last time to fully ascend. And this time I grab the Augury of Penitence node, which I do believe is the right play for now for some extra deeps. I keep mapping, get to level 85, then 86, and find this nice pair of armor boots from a Betrayal dude, and it has the move speed plus onslaught on kill mod on there, so I absolutely swap over to it, despite it not having any ES, which is a bummer. I have a funny interaction on stream where a viewer, it's pronounced Trinant, mentions that I could use the Soul of Rislatha Pantheon node to deal with the life regen a lot of monsters I've been encountering have, only to realize that I freaking skipped over Rislatha in the campaign and I'm missing a passive point. Oh my god, I'm missing one of them? Oh, that's true, I never did do it. The Puppet Mistress, okay. After that, I make enough progress in the Alice to get the Polaric Invitation to drop, and find a nice ring with Chaos Res, Cast Speed, 90 life, and room for hybrid Cold Res and Chaos Res craft. That's a juicy find. I fight the Black Star with admittedly a lot of difficulty. I've always kind of steamrolled this boss in the past, so when my damage is this bad and I have to actually do the mechanics, she puts up a really good fight. I use all 6 of my portals to finally take her down, and I am very grateful for the no experience lost during bosses change that came with this expansion, something I've been wanting for years. I level up to 87, finally adding in Frost Bomb to the build to deal with those pesky life regen mobs, and before I know it, I get the Writhing Invitation, which I pop into my map device to face off with the Infinite Hunger, aka worst boss in the game. I managed to beat him deathless, but it is a long and painful fight. Something I seem to be completely oblivious about while fighting these guys is that my mercenary is making them all have 50% more HP, which explains why they felt so much more tanky than usual. I, unfortunately, only remember this much later on, and to make things worse, I ran both of these bosses with Spell Cascade instead of Spell Echo. Yes, you have my permission to call me an idiot in the comments. Go ahead and roast me, it is deserved. After that, I get a Coming Calamity chess piece, which is one I've never played around with, but would love to one day, since a Herald Autobomber has always been an appealing build to me, and the closest thing to that I've ever played was Cold BV Occultist back in Affliction League, which was a lot of fun. At this point, I started speccing into Blight nodes on the Alice tree so that I could farm up some oils and actually anoint my amulet with something. I didn't know what yet, but it seemed like something smart to do. Otherwise, my Atlas was basically just focused on progressing and expedition, really. And speaking of expedition, while rolling through Tujin's wares, he offers me an Enhance. I would absolutely love to snag this up to link it to my Energy Blade, but I don't have enough of his currency for it, so I'll need to farm some more expeditions. 33 of them, perhaps? Bruh. I get to level 88 and find this absurdly insane looking minion wand for SSF, but I'm not a minion build, so it's just gonna collect dust in my stash, unfortunately. I finally figure out what node I can anoint onto my amulet given the oils that I've farmed up, and I grab Prodigal Perfection, which gives me 20% increased maximum mana and a fair amount of spell damage to go along with it. A few maps later, I run into Egan for the first time. This is the new character that got added into game with the Secrets of the Alice expansion, and he's supposed to be Xana's brother or something, which, you know, is interesting if you're into the lore and all that. Anyways, he introduces me to the Memory Terror mechanic, which is really similar to the old memory mechanic the game already had, which apparently got built into Kirac missions now, though I didn't run anything like that at all on this playthrough, so I don't really know how that works. Anyways, memories are pretty simple. You encounter a tear in a map, then when you talk to Egan in your hideout, he'll open up a chain of 4 maps in a row that you can use crafting orbs on if you want to make them tougher and more rewarding. Once you get to the 4th one, there's a big boss you gotta fight. In my case, and I don't know if it's the same order for everybody, but I had to fight a memory of Cyrus as my 4th map, and boy, was that ever a long fight. Oh man, my damage is abysmal, even with spell echo, but at least I do seem to be pretty tanky in one-on-one boss situations. After killing this fake Cyrus over the course of a 7-minute long boss fight, Egan then opens up another set of portals, this time to a completely new boss fight, the first of the 3 bosses that I set out to beat when starting this whole challenge. Meet the Incarnation of Neglect. This guy is awesome. Like, yes, this fight took me 14 minutes to complete, which was exhausting, but man, his moves and mechanics are really cool. So there are these 4 statues in the corners of the room that you have to walk up to and activate, and then they follow you around for a few seconds before becoming statues again, right? The reason you want to do this is that they block lasers that this big floaty staff-wielding boss sends your way. So you're constantly adjusting where these statues are standing relative to you so that you can hang out in between them to avoid the lasers while having to weave in and out of the boss's other deadly moves, of which he has many. I don't know, I just thought this is such a cool fight, and I can't wait to fight him again in the future when I'm on a build that actually deals damage. Anyways, I took him down after a very long 14 minutes, and he dropped a brand new unique rain called Betrayal's Sting, which gives your hits that would inflict a poison a chance to inflict 2 stacks of poison instead. That's pretty cool, but utterly useless for us. With one of the 3 bosses down, I'm feeling pretty good about how far this build has come, despite it not being anywhere near the power level I'm used to in trade leagues at this point. SSF really does force you to play the game differently, and progress is much slower, but when you find cool items, they are so much more exciting than they are in trade league because it's like, wow, I could actually do something with it. Like, for example, this Paradoxica that I found. Now, to be honest, I don't know what the Paradoxica meta is right now, so when I unveiled it, I just went with my gut and ended up with a Fizz and Impale plus attack speed and blood rage combo, which I imagine could be really strong on a champion or maybe a Slayer even. I don't know, did I hit the jackpot and I should build something around this, or is this a complete miss? You guys let me know. I also ran into a Starfall crater where I fought this annoying boss who dropped absolutely nothing of value to me. Since I was completely ignoring the King's March mechanic, we already had a year of it and I didn't like it then and I still don't like it now. I get to level 90 while defending a Blight, which is where this build will ultimately stay as I could never get another level. I just kept ramping up the difficulty on maps and paying the price for it. I started another memory thread and faced off with the Cardinal of Fear next. This guy is a remake of one of the Legion bosses that I barely ever see, and honestly, this went way better than the fake Cyrus fight, as I took him down in just under 3 minutes. Before fighting his head honcho, I run a few more normal maps and found this insane Moonlit Circlet helm that I was able to craft into a 364 ES beast thanks to its memory strands it had. These pseudo-smart loot items are an amazing addition to the game if you ask me. I love them. I decided to take a break from pushing the hard stuff and try doing a bit of a unique items farm by speccing my second Atlas tree into Rogue Exiles and the Tormented Ghosts, which I do for about 10 maps or so. I run these in yellow maps and man, even though they are yellow, some of these exiles and especially bosses can become more deadly than the pinnacles I've been fighting so far. I mean, just look at this gorilla, dude. I couldn't even grab the crafting recipe. While I did get quite a few new uniques this way, the highlight of this little session was definitely finding a Perkle's Toe, which I put on my mercenary, giving his nearby allies, aka me, lucky damage with hits. If you're not familiar with lucky mechanic, this just means that my actual damage values I do gets rolled twice and takes the highest number of the two. So for example, if my Storm Call could roll between let's say 50 and 2000 damage and it landed on 75 on the first roll but 1850 on the second, then it'll do the 1850 instead. It's a huge DPS increase, especially for lightning skills which always have very wide ranges of damage rolls. Anyhow, with Perkle's Toe on my merc, I decide to face off with the second of the trio of new bosses, the Incarnation of Fear. solo, because I realized that my Merc giving the boss 50% more HP is probably not going to work into my favor even with the lucky hits factored into the equation. This guy gave me a run for my money, like holy shit. I did not understand what was going on in this fight at all. Before I knew it, there were giant expanding fireballs all over the arena, and I felt like I had less and less space to try and dodge his attacks in. After taking him down to about like 70% HP and dying 3 times, I did the unthinkable. I looked him up on the wiki.
Holy shit!
And I am glad I did, because yeah, if you stand in front of those orbs while he's charging up his spear throw attack and dodge out of the way at the last second, he'll blow up the orb behind you, clearing up some space for you to run around in. Armed with this new knowledge, I returned into the fight and danced around the arena, channeling my inner faker to bait out all those spear throws as best I could, and eventually, through some very meticulous play, I whittled him down to 0 HP. I was rewarded with a cool looking body armor called the Servant of Decay, which has a fair amount of ES and summons little voidlings every 4 seconds that can absorb damage for you while boosting your DPS. It sounds really cool, and I'd love to see what kind of builds people come up with it using the item in the future. 2 out of the 3 bosses down, only 1 left. But first, there are a couple more familiar faces I need to take care of. Say hello to Eater and Exarch, both which went down without a hitch, well except for the Exarch ball phase that my mercenary ran into and took me down with him. I got my 2 void stones and then entered a Poorjoy's Asylum that Kirak opened up for me, where I died a whole bunch but also had this happen. Yeah, a second Divine Orb. Still equally useless in SSF, but if this was trade, you'd bet your butt I'd be spending it on upgrades ASAP. At this point, I realized something pretty cool that I don't think I've ever had happen before. I naturally found all 3 of the Barrack rings, which means I can actually combine them and make a taming. So I go ahead and do that. Now, I'm not exactly always chilling enemies, but my Frostblink does seem to often apply a chill, and I freaking have a taming in SSF, so what the hell, let's use it even if it isn't the absolute most optimal play here. I take out a couple mini-bosses, Baran the Crusader and the Chicken Nuggy guy, before hopping back into some memory threads where I have to take care of a souped-up version of Innocence. It's a rough fight, and I do die. But ultimately, Storm Call does prevail. And now, this is it. This is the final boss of the trio that I've set out to defeat in SSF, the incarnation of Dread. So I walk in, just me, myself, and oh shit, what's my Merc doing here? Damn it, this is gonna be another long one. And I was right, it was a long fight, but also kind of the easiest of the 3 if you ask me. Like, don't get me wrong, I did die to his shotgunning lightning novas, but apart from those, the mechanics all felt pretty intuitive to me. He's got Shaper / Maven balls, you've got to position properly off to the edges, a giant fiery AoE attack that is literally just copy-pasted from PoE2's Arbiter.
You wouldn't, some people might be able to see, oh, wait, I feel like I've seen that before, maybe, but you'd have to look real close and be real into it.
Yeah.
As well as a rose collecting minigame, which was just like, whatever, it was fine. It's a cool fight, there's a lot going on, but it felt pretty fair to me. Anyways, my reward for taking him down was the Dark Monarch helmet, which rolled with animate weapons as the minion skill, which I imagine is pretty freaking sweet on an anime weapon build. With these 3 bosses down, that marks the end of this Storm Call Inquisitor's adventure. Huge thank you again to the channel members Jody Sanders, Rumblestuff, Nicholas Stringer, and Akoni Yu. You guys are awesome, and yeah, I'll leave a POB in the description so that you can see what not to do in your builds in the future. I've got a spicy PoE2 build roulette video coming up next, stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys there.